Longfield School in Darlington has had a real leadership revolution over the last 5 years, with technology at its heart. In 2003, things were very different. They had a falling roll, their GCSE results were less than 35% 5A stars to C, and they had only a handful of computers. When Keith Cotgrave took over as head that year, he believed ICT would be key to helping him and his senior leaders overhaul teaching and learning and transform the school.
We don't engage in a technological revolution because we just think it's a nice thing to do. You know, we're doing it because there's a real hard edge to it. And it does make a difference, it has made a difference.
Under Keith's leadership, by 2009 the school results had leapt to 78% 5A stars to C. We'll see how Keith built up strong middle leaders to drive their new technology vision, the systems they've built to finance ICT and audit ongoing improvements, and how they continue to drive forward curriculum developments. This is the story of their journey. When Keith first arrived at Longfield, the school only had a few computers in the building.
Longfield was pretty much like going to a museum. The lessons were characterised really by a 1970s or 80s sort of feel to them. They weren't very engaging, they weren't very lively. The only way we were going to raise standards, to my mind, was to get a large set of like-minded teachers who were committed to the raising standards agenda and just provide them with the kit and the wherewithal to transform the learning in the classrooms.
Right, everybody, I'm going to open our lesson today through my Talmos timetable. And as you know, when you go onto your timetable on Talmos, you'll have today's lesson and all the resources there.
Now Longfield has a sophisticated learning platform that enables teachers to share resources not only with each other, but with every student.
I think the sharing of resources, it's great that they can go into their timetable, they can see what they're going to be doing. If they have a homework task that's based on something they've done in the lesson, they can access the PowerPoint again, they can look at the slide that talked about whatever it is they've been asked to do.
I've looked before on my timetable to find out what I've got, and if it's something you don't really know about, then you can go off and do a little bit of research before the lesson, so you feel like you're a bit more confident when it comes around to the lesson. So
today, by the end of the lesson, I want you to understand what a quest narrative is.
When Keith started, none of the 54 classrooms had an interactive whiteboard. He changed all that in the summer holidays of 2005.
The plan was pretty simple, and I think people like plans to be pretty simple. During the summer, we decorated all of the classrooms, we ripped out all of the blackboards, we put in whiteboards, we put a PC on everybody's desk, we put 250 machines around the school for the children. So that September, everybody came back, and that was the way the classroom of the future was to be.
Characters. Give me an example of one just to start us off.
Like a baddie.
Great idea.
They're all very colourful, so it makes you want to learn about it more.
When we put the boards in the first instance, I was very, very careful to say to staff, we've only got one objective this year, is to become reasonably familiar with that whiteboard. It wasn't a big ask.
So you have 2 minutes to think of as many of these stories as you can, starting from now.
A byproduct that we didn't expect was the amount of creativity and the enthusiasm that was generated and making their own resources.
Stop! Excuse me. One of the things that I wanted as head of department was to achieve a level of consistency of teaching and learning. For example, with things like assessment. Today's lesson, as a plenary, I'm using something we call plenary pyramid. We may have a resource like this ready. Somebody else can go into my timetable or my plans, they can access the resource, but they can also tailor the resource for their own class.
We chose to develop the learning platform, and there was 2 strands to that. One was workforce reform. You know, young teachers come into the profession and an awful lot of them leave after 3 years, and the main reason for that is the planning and the time that it takes. So one strand was to make that less labour intensive. The other strand was those resources had to be put onto a learning platform in order to share them with the children.
So we're going to look at using the learning portal to share resources with both the students and colleagues.
Keith saw that developing leadership for staff training was essential for achieving his vision. He appointed David Hunton to lead staff development from the outset.
I mean, when I started, I was a head of department of technology, and in the department we did a bit of control and model making and things like that. So he decided that was background enough to launch an IT revolution. It's also by
At the end of the first year, I think about 14 people decided that they didn't really want to go on the journey, you know, and they decided to leave. Fortunately, there were some tremendously talented people already in the building. What Dave had was a massive amount of credibility with the staff. We were all learning this together.
And that has moved it into the Talmos server. If you don't just upload it. We now have training running across the whole year. We try to have an IT champion, as it were, in every department who supports colleagues. We have course CPD, which everybody's expected to attend. And my main responsibility is for personalised learning and personalised training. So I will spend time sitting with individual members of staff as often as necessary, as often as possible, to support their development.
That is so much easier than copying files, paper and everything else.
One of the messages I've tried to get across over the years, I'm no technology geek. I usually use an analogy about the car I have. I have a car, it's got a 6-speed automatic gearbox and 2 reverse gears, and I don't know how it works. But I don't need to know how it works. I just need to know what it does.
You know, the focal point is really, really sharp, and what's in the background has blurred away quite nicely. That's nice. Yeah, that's okay.
Financing the ICT developments required strategic thinking. Jeff Perry has been at Longfield for over 30 years. His art department was one of the first departments to get a cash injection for new technology.
Probably the reason why a lot of this equipment is in the room is it's because of pupil request. Now, when can we do graphics? When can we use computers? When can we have this piece of software? And at one time, we took it on loan and used it for 30 days. When we saw the results, we were then able to afford it. And that provides the impetus.
People have said, well, they must have received a grant, they must have won the lottery. None of those things were true. We just used normal school budget and a little bit of capital money.
So this is Longfield server room. When I arrived 6 years ago, there was none of this equipment at all.
Network manager Les Schutt has been key to the strategic ICT investment plans.
And I started work, we changed out the servers, and going from 124 computers to 350. It was quite a jump, quite a leap. But we have now in place a rolling cycle of replacing our network.
Well, after the first major investment, the governors decided to set aside a sum of money every year so that we have a 3-year rolling programme of reinvestment, so that we're never going to be in a position that I inherited from day one, where there'd been a chronic lack of investment, a sort of a boom and bust economy where lots of kit came in and then there was no investment for a few years and the kit decayed and fell apart. Now every 3 years we recycle and renew.
One of the things we realised that we needed when we did our last upgrade was space. The art department using massive amounts of space. They're talking about doing more graphics courses and getting into movies. So we decided we'd go for a SAN solution, and we have a 16 terabyte SAN down there.
You don't really need to know the technical terms. It's not important. As a head teacher, you need to understand what the technology can do for the children and how it can engage children and how it can transform learning.
Now at Longfield, there is a computer for every 2 pupils. But importantly, these technology changes were led by curriculum developments.
The main impact for us when we looked at changing the curriculum was how ICT could play a bigger part in pupils' learning. We've moved away from a heavy reliance on textbooks and published materials, and we're much more adept now at looking for solutions through ICT. Some of that becomes independent study, some of it becomes peer assessment with one another, some of it becomes a focus on group work.
What do you think this flower represents for the Fibonacci pattern?
I think it's them like spirals inside it.
In this Year 8 maths lesson, the pupils are using a wiki site to share ideas.
It looks the same as these patterns.
I feel like it's good for me because I'm learning how to do things by myself. Quite good to be able to connect to others in the class, and they can give you advice on something and you can also give them advice on other things.
We do think it's a very sensible approach. Whether we're a long way down the government's agenda or not, I don't really care. I know we constantly are seeking and looking for new ways to make it even better. And one of the big areas that we are exploring now is the use of mobile technologies.
What do you think of that? That's good. How could we actually use a device like this in our lessons?
Assistant Head Teacher Terry Conway leads regular new technology sessions with members of the school council.
So for lesson objectives, instead of writing them down, you can take a picture of them.
So you can take a picture of your lesson objectives?
Yeah.
How much time do you spend writing your lesson objectives at the start of a lesson?
About 5 to 10 minutes.
About 5 or 10 minutes.
If you weren't there in the lesson, you could get a friend to video record it, so then you'd see the lesson.
We have a very active school council membership. We do call them the senior management team of the school in terms of pupil voice, because they are. And most of our decisions we actually run past them. French? All right. How could you use this in French?
You could listen to how you pronounce things and understand a little bit better and try and pronounce them yourself the same way they do.
How could we use the camera in science?
Experiments.
Experiments?
At the moment, you just write the results of your experiment. Whereas if you had that, you could record the results straight into Excel after videoing it, and then you've always got the video with you when you go home and write it all up. It's an exciting prospect. I don't know if it'll be happening while I'm still at the school, but I can certainly see it happening eventually.
This new technology may not be in the school for a few years, but now pupils can access the VLE from home or from school.
You're going to open up that homework task, you're going to do it, and then you're going to send it back to me.
My mum really likes this system because she goes on the homepage of mine and see what homeworks I've got, so she knows that I'm not leaving it to the last minute.
Right, and I'm going to give you all until 9 o'clock tonight to decide whether or not you can't.
Again, a lot of terminology around, learning platforms, VLEs. It's the glue.
Any night before 9 on the computer, yeah, because I think that's late enough.
Technology is merely there to help you deliver better teaching and learning, and therefore better outcomes for children.
I think one thing we have established over the last year is the difference in staff's mind between using ICT for teaching and the understanding of how children use ICT for learning.
School leaders are responsible for keeping a close eye on the ongoing technology agenda. David Hunton does a regular health check of their ICT strategy.
But all the facilities that we're setting up at the moment are available 24/7.
Yeah.
So we're personalising it to a point where any child can access it at any time.
We do spend a sizable amount of public money. To put too fine a point on it, we've got to see results. We need to know that actually outside of school, particularly, the kids are really making good use of it.
We do have evidence. When we first introduced the revision areas in the portal, we put a page counter on that. We had tens of thousands of hits.
They're in school for 15% of the time, they're out of school for 85% of the time. I think we can find more gains in the 85% than we can in the 15%.
I believe that without the support of the head, it would have been impossible to drive through the amount of change and the pace of change that the school has sustained over the past 5 years.
What people have still got to really understand is that it's an entitlement for the children. This work has to be funded and will continue to be funded. All that's happening is that those teaching and learning materials are different. It's not an extra. It's not some mythical sort of bonus. It's what they're entitled to. And yeah, it is nice when Ofsted come in and say you're doing a fantastic job. It's quite a rare event, isn't it? But at the end of the day, we've got to do a job 7 days a week, 365 days of the year for the kids in the community. And that's what we're committed to doing.